Some doors were never meant to be open. For 7 people across the country, a routine night alone at home spiraled into encounters so disturbing, several of them still sleep with the lights on. One survivor's security footage revealed something in their house that authorities still can't explain. These are their stories, and a warning: after hearing them, you might never want to be home alone again. I still look over my shoulder whenever I hear footsteps behind me. The sound brings me right back to that night when I learned how quickly safety can shatter. The Matthews hired me because of my computer smarts, just a simple house-sitting gig while they enjoyed their second honeymoon in Bali. Their smart home system was my kind of thing. I'd been coding since I was 12. The job was easy at first, lounging by their pool, keeping their fancy orchids alive, playing with their home automation because honestly, their setup was sweet. I spent the first few days just exploring all the features, setting up custom routines, fixing that annoying lag in their entertainment system that had been driving them crazy. I even added some extra security protocols just for fun because I could, because I never imagined I'd need them. The alert hit my phone at 2 or 7 a.m., security cameras failing one after another in a pattern that made my stomach drop. Not random, deliberate. Someone was cutting off my eyes to the outside, moving closer, closer, alert, back door lock, disengaged. My hands shook as I pulled up the house layout. Whoever this was, they knew the system inside out. They were ghosting through blind spots, dodging motion sensors, like they'd memorized every detail. I watched through the remaining cameras as dark shapes moved across the yard. Professional, methodical. This wasn't some random break-in. The panic room, down in the basement, Mrs. Matthews had shown it to me with a strange intensity I hadn't understood then. Just in case, she'd said. Her eyes had held something, fear maybe, or determination. I ran, bare feet silent on marble floors. Behind me, soft footsteps, steady, unhurried. They knew exactly where I'd go, but I had one advantage. They didn't know what I'd added to the system. I dove into the panic room, sealed the door. My laptop was already open. The house was my weapon now. I wrote scripts with trembling fingers, turning every smart device into a trap. Blasting heat in some rooms, freezing others, lights strobing, speakers shrieking, the irrigation system spraying ice-cold water through the garden, meisters I'd reprogrammed to point inside. I could see them through the cameras that were left, moving through my chaos with frightening purpose. 3 figures, all in black, professional gear, but one of them, the way they navigated, the familiar gesture checking that one glitchy camera in the hall. Horror hit like ice water. It was Mr. Matthews, here, not in Bali. The others must be his crew. This was planned, calculated, and I was never supposed to survive it. I heard his voice through the door, so different from his usual warmth. Clever girl, but we both know you can't stay in there forever. The backup power won't last more than a few hours. Make this easy on yourself. That's when my phone lit up, a text from Mrs. Matthews. Hold on, police come in. Thank you for being exactly who I needed you to be. I'm so sorry. The pieces clicked. Later I learned the truth about the other house sitters who'd vanished over the years. Young women like me, chosen because they lived alone. No one to miss them right away. About Mrs. Matthews getting suspicious after finding old records. Newspaper articles about missing girls in other cities, following her husband's business trips like breadcrumbs. About how she'd chosen me specifically, young, tech-savvy, smart enough to survive, connected enough to be missed immediately if something happened. I was never just a house sitter, I was bait and proof. The cameras caught everything that night. Every move, every word, every attempt they made to get to me. The police found the other bodies exactly where my footage showed them going, that storage unit they thought the cameras couldn't see. Mr. Matthews and his crew are in prison now, multiple life sentences, no chance of parole. Mrs. Matthews testified against him, helped the families get closure. She writes to me sometimes, apologizes for putting me at risk, says she didn't know what else to do. How else to stop him? I understand, I do. Sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones closest to us. the ones we trust with our lives without realizing they're counting down the moments until they can take them. But understanding doesn't make it easier, doesn't stop me from jumping at shadows, from checking my security system 3 times before bed, from looking over my shoulder at every footstep. The world feels different now, darker, full of hidden teeth. I keep coding though, building better security systems, teaching other girls how to protect themselves, because monsters are real. They hide behind rings and roses and second honeymoons, behind perfect houses with perfect security systems, behind smiles that warm everything but their eyes. But I survived. I'm stronger now, smarter, and maybe, just maybe, I can help make sure the next girl survives too, even if I still check over my shoulder every single day. I haven't slept in 3 days. My anxiety meds are running low, and I know he knows it. I've been tracking my deliveries obsessively since moving to this lake house 6 months ago. Everything arrives like clockwork, except my prescriptions. They always show signs of being opened. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. That's what my therapist would say, but then I started noticing other things. The scraping sounds at night, too rhythmic to be house settling, the way my groceries sometimes get unpacked when I'm sleeping. Items moving just slightly from where I left them. I know what you're thinking. Why don't I just leave, call the police, get help? But you don't understand. I haven't stepped outside in 2 years, not since the incident. My riding pays the bills and everything gets delivered. It was perfect, until I realized I wasn't alone. The first real proof came last week. I was working late on my latest manuscript, another domestic thriller. The irony isn't lost on me. The sound of type-in usually drowns out the house noises, but this was different. A cough, muffled, but distinctly human, coming from beneath my feet. I stopped breathing, stayed perfectly still, another cough, then shuffling. Someone was down there, in my crawl space. I wanted to run, but where? The doors might as well be walls to me. My throat closed up just thinking about stepping outside. I started rationing my medication that night. 2 pills left now. My hands shake as I type this. The sounds are getting bolder. Last night I heard humming. He's not even trying to hide anymore. He knows I'm trapped, that I'll never make that call, never walk out that door. The delivery truck comes tomorrow with my refill, but he'll get to it first, like always. My only choice is the crawlspace door in my hallway. I've been staring at it for hours. My heart races every time I take a step toward it. But I have to end this. The alternative is running out of medication, facing the outside world. And that terrifies me more than whatever's waiting beneath my feet. I'm going to open that door tonight. I have to. While I still have enough medication in my system to function, while I still have a chance. The sun is setting now. Soon it will be dark. And then I'll find out who's been living under my feet all this time. My hands won't stop shaking as I grip the flashlight. 1 pill left. I swallow it dry. Need steady nerves for what comes next. The crawlspace door feels heavier than it should be. When it creaks open, I almost scream. The beam of my flashlight catches something moving in the darkness. Something that shouldn't be there. Cardboard boxes, dozens of them, stacked like walls, creating paths, a maze. And there, hanging from strings, my missing prescriptions, empty bottles swaying gently in the draft. He's been collecting them, tracking how many pills I have left, how much time until I beg. I hear movement deeper in the maze, breathing. He's waiting for me. I should close the door, retreat to my safe space upstairs, but I can't, because I finally understand. He's not just living down here, he's built his own world, a mirror of mine. Both of us trapped, both of us hiding. The next sound freezes my blood, not because it's threatening, but because it's familiar. Sarah. My name, in my brother's voice. The same voice I last heard 2 years ago, the day everything went wrong, the day I stopped leaving the house. I knew you'd come down eventually. He steps into the light, thinner, but still Michael, still my protector, even after what I did to him. You didn't have to steal my medication, I whisper. He laughs, hollow and wrong. How else could I make you face it, face me, face what really happened that day? The truth hits harder than any pill withdrawal could. He's right. I've been hiding, not just from the world, but from the memory, from the moment I left him behind, from the guilt that's been eating me alive these past 2 years. And now there's nowhere left to hide. No more medication to numb the pain. Just me, my brother, and the long overdue conversation that will either save us both or destroy what's left of our broken minds. I take one step forward into the maze, into the truth, into whatever waits in the darkness of our shared madness. I still check my camera roll every morning, deleting anything I don't remember taking. My hands shake as I do it, but I have to be sure. I was house sitting for my professor during winter break. A beautiful craftsman home nestled in the Vermont woods, the kind of place where you'd want to curl up with a book and watch the snow fall. That's exactly what I planned to do for those 2 weeks. Just me, my textbooks, and blessed silence, though, being deaf. That's my constant companion anyway. The first few days were peaceful. I'd wake up, study for my spring semester, take care of the professor's plants. The routine was simple. Wake at 7, water the exotic collection of orchids by 8, spend the morning with my nose buried in linguistics textbooks, break for lunch, then curl up in the window seat to watch the snow dusting the pines. But then I started noticing things, small things. A coffee mug moved from where I'd left it, books slightly out of place on the shelf, the kind of details most people would miss. But when you can't hear, your eyes become incredibly sharp. They have to be. At first, I blamed it on stress. Finals had been brutal, and the isolation of being in a stranger's home, even one as lovely as this, was starting to wear on me. The storm hit on day 5, heavy snow cutting off the winding driveway, no way in or out. That's when I really started paying attention. The throw blanket on the couch, it was folded differently than how I'd left it. My favorite reading spot by the window, the cushion was still warm when I hadn't sat there for hours. The bathroom mirror slightly fogged as if someone had just showered. But I hadn't. I started documenting everything, taking photos of how I arranged things before bed, before leaving rooms, just to be sure, just to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. The isolation was getting to me. I thought the silence I usually found so comforting felt different, heavier somehow, like it was hiding something. I started sleeping with my bedside lamp on, watching the shadows on the wall, looking for movement, any sign that my unease had a real source. That's when I found them. Scrolling through my phone at 3 a.m. during another sleepless night. Photos I hadn't taken, dozens of them, all of me, sleeping, in different positions, different nights. The timestamp on the first one, the day I arrived. In some, the blanket was pulled up to my chin. In others, my arm was dangling off the bed, my hair splayed across the pillow, my chest rising and falling in peaceful ignorance, all taken from the same angle, the corner of my bedroom. My bedroom with its door that I definitely locked every night. Some of the photos were closer, like whoever took them had gotten braver, had stood right next to my bed, had reached out, a shadow of a hand visible at the edge of one frame, almost touching my face. I tried to call the police, but the storm had knocked out cell service. The landline was dead. I spent that night in the bathroom, door locked, shower curtain pulled back so no one could hide there. Jump at every shadow, every movement caught in the corner of my eye. When dawn finally came, I threw my things in my bag and walked 3 miles through the snow to the nearest neighbor. The police found no evidence of a break-in, no footprints in the snow besides mine. The professor swears she gave me the only key, said the house's security system showed no entries or exits during my stay. But I know what I saw. I know those photos existed, even though they vanished from my phone the next morning. Could someone have been there the whole time, hidden in some corner of that big house, watching me? Or was there another explanation, one I'm not ready to face? I'm staying with my parents now, changed my phone, changed my number. But sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, wondering if I should check my current camera roll, wondering if it's happening again. But I'm almost too scared to look, because what if, this time, I see something worse than photos? What if I see proof that whatever was watching me in that house has followed me home? The worst part is, after everything that happened, I had to go back to that house one last time to return the key. The professor insisted, said she needed it for the cleaning service. I stood on the porch, hand trembling as I reached for the mailbox slot. That's when I noticed it. A small black object tucked into the corner of the doorframe. A camera, tiny but unmistakable, and there were more. I started seeing them once I knew what to look for, in the light fixtures, behind the bookshelves, all around the house. The police are investigating now, but they still can't explain the photos on my phone, or why they disappeared, or why, when I checked my cloud storage last night, I found a new folder, empty except for a single photo of me and standing on that porch, reaching for the mailbox taken just yesterday. I still replay that night in my head, trying to figure out if I could have noticed the signs sooner. The Martinez family had hired me to watch their daughter Emma 3 nights a week while they worked late. I'd been babysitting since I was 14, but keeping track of time was always a struggle with my ADHD. The constant battle between hyperfocus and distraction meant I had to set alarms for everything. Even remembering to take my meds was a daily challenge. That Tuesday started like any other sitting job. I arrived at 6 p.m. sharp, proud that my new routine was working. Mrs. Martinez left detailed instructions about Emma's bedtime and emergency contacts, all neatly arranged on the fridge. The first call came at 7:15, right after I'd finished helping Emma with her math homework. "Hello, is Jessica there?" A man's voice, calm, professional. I explained he had the wrong number. 2 minutes later, another call. "Is this Pete's Pizza?" A woman this time. Different voice, but something felt off about her tone. Almost rehearsed. I hung up and tried to focus on getting Emma ready for bed. My mind kept wandering to the calls, though something about them nagged at me. The third call came at 7:45, the same man from before. "Sorry to bother you again. Is Jessica available?" That's when it clicked. The timing, the different voices. They were testing response times, seeing how quickly I'd answer, seeing if I was alone. My heart started racing, thoughts spiraling in every direction. I needed to focus, think. The security system. Where was the panel? Kitchen. No, living room. By the front door, I grabbed Emma's hand. "Hey, sweetie. Want to play a special game?" She nodded, excited. "We're going to be super quiet ninjas and hide in your special fort." I helped her into the hall closet, her favorite hideout, lined with pillows and blankets. "Stay here, okay? Like a ninja." I called 911, speaking in whispers, told them about the calls, about my suspicions. The dispatcher understood immediately. Police were already on their way. That's when I saw it, a shadow moving past the kitchen window. Then another by the back door. The handle started to turn, slowly. Testing. My hand shook as I punched in the security code, set the alarm. The sound of glass breaking came from upstairs. Heavy footsteps. I pressed myself against the closet door, shielding Emma, willing my ragged breathing to quiet. A creak from the stairs, getting closer. The alarm blared, piercing, deafening, footsteps running, doors slamming. Blue lights flooded the windows. Emma whimpered softly behind me. I held her close, whispering that everything would be okay, that the police were here to help us. My heart didn't stop racing until I heard the officers' radios crackling in the hallway. They swept the house room by room, found the broken window upstairs. Evidence of at least 3 intruders, but we were safe. They caught 3 of them trying to escape through the neighbors' yards. The police said they'd hit 5 other houses in the area, all babysitters, all alone with kids. They studied patterns, routines, used the calls to check response times, figure out when guards were down. I got lucky. My ADHD brain, always analyzing patterns, making connections, probably saved our lives that night. The detectives later told me they'd been tracking this group for months. They targeted young babysitters specifically, knew we'd be distracted, vulnerable. The calls were their signature, testing response times, gauging awareness. I gave my statement 3 times that night, each time remembering new details, the slight accent in the woman's voice, the background noise during the second call, the exact timing between each ring, details my hyperactive mind had cataloged without realizing. These days, I still babysit, but now I have a new routine. Check the security system first, note exit routes, and never, ever answer calls from numbers I don't know. I keep a journal now, writing down every detail that seems off, every pattern that catches my attention. My therapist says it's both a coping mechanism and a strength. learning to trust those instincts that others might dismiss as paranoia or overthinking. Because sometimes, the most innocent things, like a wrong number, aren't innocent at all. And sometimes, the very traits we see as weaknesses can become our greatest strengths. The Martinez family still calls me to babysit. Emma and I have a special bond now, forged in that quiet closet while we waited for help. She's older now, but she still likes to build pillow forts, and I still check them every time, making sure they're secure. Some patterns you learn to break, others you learn to watch for. Because in the end, it's not about living in fear, it's about staying aware, learning to trust your instincts, and knowing that sometimes the difference between safety and danger lies in noticing what others might miss. I never thought my first big break as a true crime podcaster would turn into my own personal nightmare. My parents were always supportive of my hobby, recording episodes about unsolved cases in our small town from my bedroom studio. That changed the day I started investigating Ashley Cooper's disappearance. I can still remember sitting at my desk, reading through old newspaper clippings about the 16-year-old girl who vanished without a trace in 1992, the same year my parents bought our house. I was alone that week, my first time staying by myself while they visited my grandmother. They'd left strict instructions: don't have anyone over, keep the doors locked, and whatever you do, don't go into the attic. That last rule seemed strange. We'd always used the attic for storage, but suddenly it was off limits. I probably would have listened if I hadn't found that old article, the one that listed Ashley's last known location, 147 Oak Street, my address. My hands were shaking as I read the details. She'd been visiting a friend who lived here before we moved in. No one ever saw her leave. The police searched the house, found nothing. The case went cold, but something about it felt wrong. I couldn't stop thinking about those boxes in the attic, the ones my parents moved up there last month, the ones they were so adamant I shouldn't touch. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt different somehow, every creak and shadow making my skin crawl. I kept thinking about Ashley. Was she here? In this house? Did she walk these same floors? I tried focusing on editing my latest episode, but the questions wouldn't stop. Around midnight, I heard it. Footsteps above my bedroom in the attic. My heart nearly stopped. I told myself it was just the house settling. Old homes make noise, especially at night. But then, the footsteps moved, deliberate, slow, like someone was pacing. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911. The footsteps stopped, right above my bed. A soft thud followed, like something being dropped or moved. I should have stayed in my room, should have called the police instead. I grabbed my flashlight and recorder, telling myself this could be content for my show. The attic stairs creaked under my weight, each step feeling like a mistake. The beam of my flashlight caught dust motes swirling in the air. And then, the boxes. They were different than I remembered, arranged in a neat row against the far wall. Someone had been up here recently. My hands trembled as I approached the nearest box. The tape was already loose, like it had been opened and resealed multiple times. Inside, letters, dozens of them, all addressed to Ashley Cooper, all postmarked within the last month. My blood ran cold as I read the return address. It was my parents' names, but the address, it was for a P.O. box I'd never heard of. The letters were all the same. "We're sorry, we didn't mean to. Please forgive us." Over and over, different dates, same message. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around, the flashlight beam cutting through darkness. Nothing, but the air felt heavy, wrong, like someone was watching, waiting. I stuffed one of the letters in my pocket and ran. Back to my room, doors locked, heart pounding. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I spent hours researching, following leads. The P.O. box belonged to a storage facility across town. The owner remembered my parents, said they'd been renting a unit there since 1992. The same year Ashley disappeared, the same year they bought our house. I called my parents, confronted them about the letters, the storage unit. Their response chilled me more than any horror story I'd ever covered. "We'll be home tomorrow. Don't go back in the attic. Please, just wait until we get there. We can explain everything." I'm recording this now in case something happens. The footsteps are back, louder this time, and I swear I can hear something else, like someone crying or screaming, but the sound is muffled, distant, coming from behind the storage unit my parents have been paying for all these years. If you're listening to this, it means I finally uncovered the truth about Ashley Cooper, about my parents, about why they never wanted me to start this podcast. I just hope I'm still alive to share it. The doorbell just rang. My parents aren't supposed to be home until tomorrow, but I can see their car in the driveway, and they're carrying something wrapped in plastic, like the kind they use for storage. I should run, call the police, do something. But I need to know the truth, even if it's the last story I ever tell. This is Riley. I still can't explain what happened during those 3 weeks in my sister's lake house, but I know what I saw, what I wrote, and it terrifies me. I'd been clean for 8 months when everything started falling apart. The loan sharks were getting bolder, leaving notes on my car, following me to work. I needed to disappear for a while. My sister offered her vacation home while she was overseas. Said it would be good for me to get away from the city, from temptation. The house sat on a private road, just trees and water for miles. Perfect place to lay low until things cooled down. The first week was peaceful. I spent my days reading, taking walks around the lake, actually sleeping through the night for once, but then I started losing time, just an hour here and there at first. I'd find myself in different rooms, not remembering how I got there. I blamed it on stress, the isolation. But then I found the first bet and slip. It was tucked between the pages of my journal, written in my handwriting. A 3-team parlay, the exact kind of bet that got me in trouble before. My hands shook as I read it. I hadn't placed a bet in months. Hadn't even thought about gambling. But there it was, dated yesterday. A day I barely remembered. I tore the house apart looking for more, found them hidden everywhere. Under the mattress, behind books, in the kitchen drawers, dozens of betting slips, all in my handwriting. All from nights I couldn't fully recall. The amounts got bigger, more desperate, just like before. I started setting up my phone to record at night. The footage showed me sitting at the kitchen table, writing furiously, making calls. But it wasn't me. The movements were wrong, jerky, like someone wearing my skin. I packed my bags that night, ready to take my chances with the loan sharks. But when I tried to leave, all the doors were locked, keys missing. And then I heard it, footsteps upstairs, coming down. Slow, deliberate, my own voice calling out, "Just one more bet, we can win it all back." I tried calling my sister, no signal. Tried the landline, dead. The footsteps got closer. My voice, but wrong, distorted, like hearing yourself on an old recording. Remember how good it felt and that rush when everything was on the line? The steps reached the bottom of the stairs. I could see a shadow, my shadow, moving against the wall. We found the perfect system. Look at the slips, we can't lose. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, the shadow followed, speaking in my voice. About horses, dogs, games I'd sworn never to bet on again. The odds tumbled from its mouth like a prayer. I backed away, but it kept coming, wearing my face, my clothes, even that tiny scar above my eyebrow from a childhood fall. They'll never find us here. We can bet as much as we want. And then I saw it. Behind my double, more shadows, dozens of them, all wearing my face, all holding betting slips, all speaking in my voice, about systems and odds and sure things, about how this time would be different, this time we'd win everything back. I ran, broke a window, cut myself climbing through, drove until I hit the state line. Never looked back. The police found nothing when they searched the house, just empty rooms, and betting slips covered in my handwriting, dating back years before I ever developed my addiction, each one detailing bets I'd eventually make, losses that would destroy my life. I've been clean for 2 years now, living in a different state. New name, new job, but sometimes when I'm alone at night, I hear my voice whispering odds, promising that this time we'll win. And when I look in the mirror, I catch glimpses of shadows behind me, all wearing my face, all holding betting slips, all waiting for me to make that one last bet, the one that will make everything right again. I know they're not real, they can't be. But last night, I found a betting slip on my pillow. 3-team parlay, written in my handwriting, for games that haven't happened yet. And I remember what the shadows said that night in the lake house, about having a perfect system, about never losing again, about how they'd been placing these bets for years, long before I ever walked into my first casino. I should tear it up, throw it away, but the odds, they're perfect. And maybe, just maybe, this time will be different. This time, we'll win it all back. The slip sits on my nightstand now, waiting. The games start tonight. I can feel them gathering in the corners of my room, all those versions of me. Their whispers growing louder, more insistent. They say they've seen the future, know exactly how each game will play out, show me more slips, years of wins, just waiting to be claimed. My phone is in my hand. The bookie's number already dialed. I just need to press call. Just one more bet, one last chance. The shadows press closer, wearing my face, speaking with my voice, and I realize now they've always been here, always will be, because they're not copies of me. Okay, so I know this is gonna sound totally crazy, but I swear every word is true. The walls in my apartment are moving, like actually moving, and I can prove it because I'm literally an architect and measuring stuff is what I do for a living. This whole thing started during lockdown. I was going stir crazy after like a month and a half of being stuck inside. You know how it is. So I was trying to find stuff to keep busy, and I had this random idea to update my apartment's floor plans, just for something to do, really. I got out my laser measure, the nice one I use for work, and started checking everything against the original plans. That's when things got weird. The living room was off by like 3 centimeters. I know that doesn't sound like much, but I never get measurements wrong, ever, so I checked it again and again. Next morning, another centimeter gone. Like, what the actual hell, right? At first, I thought I was losing it, like maybe quarantine had finally broken my brain or something. But I'm kind of obsessive about documentation, occupational hazard, I guess. So I started marking the walls, keeping a log, taking pictures. The space was definitely getting smaller, just a tiny bit every day. But it was happening. I tried asking around in our building's group chat, super casual, you know, just like, hey, anyone else feeling kind of claustrophobic lately? But the responses were off. Everyone replied way too fast with these weird cookie-cutter answers. Everything's fine. Maybe you need some fresh air. But then I'd run into them in the lobby and they wouldn't look at me. They'd practically run past my door. One night I heard people talking in the hallway. She's noticed too. We can't let her. Then nothing when I looked out, and next day my neighbor, this guy who'd been here forever, just vanished, left all his stuff, his car still in the garage. Building manager fed me some line about a family emergency, but I'm not stupid. I started digging into the building plans. Nothing made sense. Units that were supposed to be identical were all different sizes. Some were impossibly small. When I tried to talk to the manager about it, she just gave me this horrible, empty smile and told me I needed rest. That's when I started hearing the sounds. Not like normal building noises. This was different. Mechanical, deliberate. And underneath that, I swear this is true, something that sounded like breathing. My internet keeps cutting out now. Phone barely works. The walls are definitely closer, like 5 centimeters closer just today. You can see where the paint's cracking as they move. Nobody will help. Cops said they couldn't do anything without proof. Said everyone's feeling trapped these days. But this isn't that. I'm literally being squeezed. I broke down and made a hole in the wall today. I heard crying and I had to know what I saw in there. God, there were these huge hydraulic things going floor to ceiling, but that's not even the worst part. There was something growing on them, like living tissue wrapped around machine parts, and it moved when my flashlight hit it, like it knew I was looking. Found some old plans in the basement from the 60s. They show these crazy diagrams of the walls, like they've got circulatory systems or something, notes about feeding cycles and compression ratios, and this creepy warning, do not let them notice the changes. It's getting worse so fast now. Bathroom door won't even close anymore cause the frame's all warped. Windows are starting to bulge in like something's pushing on them. Manager slipped a note under my door. Final notice, accept the adjustment process or face immediate eviction. There was blood on it. Actually, freaking blood. Called my sister, but her voice was wrong, all flat and weird. Then I heard that same mechanical sound in the background of her call. This thing, it's spreading. I have to get out, but the front door looks wrong now, too tall and narrow, and everyone's out there. All my neighbors just standing there with these messed up smiles. Their bodies look wrong, like they've been squished into almost human shapes. Walls are barely a meter apart now, can't even lie down anymore. Going to try the fire escape. If anyone finds this, the real building plans are in my desk, the ones from 1962. Show them to someone who'll listen, someone who can stop this before it spreads everywhere. Before we all get turned into whatever they are now. They're moving again. I can hear the pistons, the tissue, they're coming.